beer, it's good for you.
Hello and welcome to the video. This is the second of my The Truth videos, the first looking at the truth behind original gravity and final gravity for recipe predictions. In this video we'll be looking at the truth behind recipe predictions in terms of bittering units from hops, otherwise known as IBU. So let's get started. In order to calculate the bittering effect from our hops, we use the alpha acid percentage from our hops, which is usually displayed on the packaging when you buy hops. In this example on screen you can see that this is just referred to as simply alpha, but it is the same thing. The alpha acids are components that are part of the resin from the hop cones. These are expressed as a percentage of the total weight of the hop, and the effect is primarily extracted through the boiling process within a brew, and thus contributing to the bitterness of our end beer. The alpha acid levels of hops are measured in a laboratory that are taken from samples of the harvest. Naturally, as hops are grown in the ground, you simply cannot expect each and every one of these to be exactly the same, so the alpha acid here is an average rather than something precise as such. Some hop suppliers have been known to cover themselves by showing a range of alpha acid percentages, but it is more common to display a single alpha acid percentage, as it suits the market where brewers can only enter one number into recipe software rather than a range of numbers. The next consideration is that when a brewer boils a hop within his or her brewing setup, this is naturally going to be considerably less efficient at extracting bitterness via alpha acid percentage compared to a testing laboratories method that is used to determine the average alpha acid percentage. For brewers, this is known as hop utilization, and this is measured differently based on factors of temperature, time, and malt density. Here you can see a simple graph that shows this very clearly. On the left hand side we can see the alpha acid utilization shown as a percentage, which is very rarely going to be over 30%. Along the bottom we can see how this changes based on time. Across the top you can see that this chart is based on a watt of 1.050 OG, which is the other variable factor here. Factors like this are often built into brewing software, and you might think that this negates the need to check the IBU yourself using specialist equipment as shown here, but you will note that if we compare the same recipe on various brewing software platforms, that the predictions are often different for IBU on each of them, because they all use a different method, it seems, to calculate IBU scoring. So which are correct? The problem here is that you won't really know, and that measuring IBU yourself requires some very specialised equipment, which is often considered too costly for some breweries, let alone being justifiable for a home brewer, which, as you can now realise, creates further uncertainty. We should also consider how storage temperature has a huge impact on the alpha acid percentage of our hops, among other factors. The very best way to store hops is in a freezer, and if you open their packaging, then be sure to use a vacuum sealer to lock in the freshness and then put them back into the freezer. However, during the life of your hops before they came to you, the different temperature conditions that the hops have been subjected to can certainly vary from very hot to very cold conditions. Keep in mind just the period in which these hops are being shipped from hop farm to the distributor, and then from distributor to homebrew store, and then potentially onto you if you buy online. The rather crude but revealing chart that you now see on screen shows data from a study from Hop Union that was taken with hops stored at 20 degrees Celsius, which is the equivalent of 68 degrees Fahrenheit. On the left of this chart you can see the percentage of alpha acids remaining, and across the bottom you can see how this relates in time in months since hop harvest. As you can now see, the Cascade hops degraded in IBU by more than 50% in 12 months at this temperature. You will also note that the Northern Brewer hops fared much better, with a reduction of just 15% at this higher than ideal temperature, so you should bear in mind that different hops degrade at different rates. If you were to store your hops in a freezer for their entire life from harvest, which for the average homebrewer is going to be somewhat impossible of course, then you can averagely expect the alpha acids to still be largely present after 6 months. But if the same hops are stored in a fridge, then after 6 months you could see a reduction of alpha acid percentage of 25% on average. For these reasons, it's very wise to buy hops from reputable sources that store hops correctly. Freezer storage is perfect, and short-term fridge storage is acceptable. If you are buying hops and then storing them at home, then be sure that they are vacuum sealed and stored in the freezer to best preserve them. So by now you will note that I have explained that hops are quite obviously grown in the ground, and that the testing they have from labs to determine their alpha acid percentage only applies to the samples they test, rather than the whole harvest, so as such hops will have a variation in their bittering effect. So in essence, AA percentage of any given hop is simply an average based on selected testing made by a laboratory. We also have the issue that this estimated average is based on a lab test rather than the actual amount you will attain during a brew, which is based on hop utilization, that are estimated based on wort density, time and temperature. These estimates also vary a fair amount depending on the brewing software that you use. Then finally, that hop storage is critical to keeping a hop's available alpha acids intact, and that you really do not know the kind of variety of different temperatures that the hops have been exposed to during their life before they reached your supplier. It is fair to say that there's a fairly large amount of uncertainty here, and yet hops are a vital part of our beer recipes no matter the style, so what should we do? My standpoint on this is as follows. Firstly, I think it's important to realise that knowledge is useful for keeping our expectations in check. Here, if you are a recipe writer, I recommend finding one software package and sticking with it. I use and recommend Brewfather, but it is fair to say that there are plenty of other good options out there. Use this one software option to calculate your recipes and experiment with the results from trial batches for new recipes until you find what is your chosen final recipe. In the end, as long as you use the same software, the accuracy of the numbers do not matter. It is simply the end beer's results. However, if you're not a recipe writer and are using the recipes of others, then I would suggest just using the recipes from reputable sources that hopefully are sharing the recipe with you within the format of a recipe calculator that you can use for all the brewing data. As brewers, we simply need to accept that beer brewing recipes can only be predicted rather than be stated as accurate, and very often I see that many brewers make the mistake of believing that these predictions are a statement of fact, when simply they could never be. I do hope that you have found this video guide useful. I have another video on my channel that also explores the truth, this time behind original gravity and final gravity predictions. This video, like this one, looks at all the factors. Check it out if you have not already. These The Truth videos look to educate and at the same time reassure brewers about the steps they can take for the best courses of action for brewing and creating beer recipes. Certainly these areas of uncertainty are important to know about. Do let myself and the community know what you think about this video and the content of it within the comments section of this video. And ever pick up all the steps that you take yourself that work well for you to counteract the uncertain areas in brewing. I do hope that you found this video useful, informative and interesting. If so, why not consider liking and subscribing? For further support, you can join the channel's Facebook group, and if you would like to support the channel, then check out the channel's merchandise store, as all profits go back into the channel. Until next time, happy brewing!